Hello, everyone. We're back with another episode of uSpark's Vodcast. Today, I'm here with my co-host, Jesslyn Gill, and also mayoral candidate, Andrew Janz.
Before we get into the question part, I just want to talk a little about what a mayor does, specifically what they do in Fresno, because the system we have here in Fresno is called a modified strong mayor system. And that's kind of where the mayor is the city's chief executive, kind of like how the president is the chief executive of the country. And while the city council has legislative power, the mayor has veto power. The mayor also directs the administrative structure, appoints and removes department heads. They also appoint a city manager who oversees the kind of daily operations for the city. And they're also really involved with developing the budget. And one more thing that's really important is that the mayor is elected by all city voters and is therefore accountable to everyone in the city, whereas city council members are more accountable to the smaller number of people in their specific districts.
So before we go into the real questions, we have some icebreakers to get to know you a little bit better.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the first one. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I do like pineapple on pizza.
All right.
Okay.
Good answer.
But I don't prefer it, though. I mean, if it's there, I'll eat it.
Okay, interesting. What's your favorite app on your phone right now?
Oh, my favorite app on my phone right now. Man, that's a good one. It's probably my ESPN app. I'm trying to, follow NFL playoffs and stuff.
Cool. Okay, last one. Do you watch TikToks?
I do not, but I know what it is.
Okay.
That's cool. Okay.
All right. So now into our core questions for the interview. So a little bit of context. To a lot of people, the gist of your campaign sometimes seems to be that you're just not dire. Is that why young people should vote for you, or is there something more to your campaign?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. I've run a very positive campaign on my vision for really the community. And a big emphasis is how we're going to turn the city around, especially for the younger generation. I'm about to have my first kid, and I want to make sure that Fresno is a place that I feel safe and proud to raise her. And so I've been talking about issues like homelessness, making sure that we address the way that we police our streets, and working to make sure that we have healthy, safe neighborhoods and parks.
We as young people, we have legitimate concerns about our future, specifically in the news lately has been Iran, climate change, things like that. What are you going to do locally to reassure young people about our future here?
Your future is so important, and that's exactly why young people need to step forward here and now, starting with this election at the very local level. Every single election matters. And so for me, in my campaign for mayor, I want to make sure that we do things to, number one, reduce the cars that we put on our streets. And then number two, all of the city vehicles that are owned by the city, I want to transition them from petroleum to electric cars. I think that will do a lot in terms of making sure that greenhouse gas emissions don't continue to pollute our air. We know that we have a really bad air quality here in Fresno, so that's super huge, super important to me. I also want to make sure that we improve our education system. Traditionally, the idea of education is separate and apart from the mayor's office. I want to work better with the school board to make sure that we create an education system here that works for everyone. We have good schools in some parts of our schools that get a lot of money, a lot of funding. We have schools in other parts of our city that are really struggling to keep good teachers and to properly educate our students and give them positive outcomes. And so a big focus of mine is also on education to make sure everyone gets a fair shot.
Okay, so next we asked our uSpark audience for questions that they had for you. So we had people submit some videos for us to show you so then you can answer their questions.
Hey, this is Aaron Frisbee, and I just got a quick question for you, Andrew Janz. And so my question would be, what value do you bring to Fresno that is very different from most candidates that is either coming before you or that it may be even coming after you? And so what is your main thing that you think you are trying to push for that is going to help change and grow Fresno? Thank you.
That was a really good question by Aaron. I think that I'm probably one of the most unique candidates that's ever run for mayor. I come from a pretty simple background. Both of my parents were immigrants, and they came to this country in search of a better life for themselves and for their kids. And so I grew up hearing my dad talk about how important it is to give back to your community. And so that's why I chose a job that involves public service and me working to help promote public safety here in the city of Fresno in our community. And so I think the best thing that I bring to the table is ethics, transparency, and leadership. We haven't had that in our city government. We've had people that have been controlled by special interest groups, developers who have dominated our politics for so long. So I've told everybody, hey, I'm not going to go out there and get this special interest money. I'm going to work for you. I'm going to work for your families. That is my priority.
So based on his question, he asked for a value. What is like one word that you would describe this value as being?
I would say ethics. Ethics is huge to me. You can't have somebody leading a big city like this that doesn't have ethics. And we've seen the problems with the Trump administration where you have an unethical leader in office. There are so many bad things that flow from it.
Cool. I have another follow-up question too. So how do you plan to bring, like you talked about not being accountable to special interests for your campaign. How do you plan to continue that if you are elected mayor? Like how do you plan to continue holding ethics as a strong value?
That is such a good question because when I take office, one of the biggest decisions that I'm going to have to make is who I'm going to surround myself with. Who am I going to hire for police chief? Who am I going to hire for city manager? And for far too long here in Fresno, what we've seen happen is that they give those jobs as political favors to their friends, their political supporters, and their donors. And so it's not going to be business as usual in my administration. The best person will get that job. And I always like to say that I want to surround myself with people that know more about issues than I do, because I frankly don't know everything. And I can only do my job effectively if I get input from the community and make sure that the people that work around me are a good representative of the cross-section of the community.
My question for Andrew Janz is, how will you stop the trends of police brutality in Fresno if elected mayor?
Ella had a really good question, and it's an issue that is on the minds of many Fresnans, especially young people, people of color, and I see that concern every single day. The biggest decision that the next mayor is going to make is who is going to be our police chief. We need a police chief that believes that we need criminal justice reform, and we need a police chief that's going to implement transparent policies that will allow the public to have a say in sort of what goes on in our police department and how they police our streets. And so for me, we need to have community-based policing. We need to make sure we have officers on the streets that grew up in their beats. That way you have that relationship with the community. We also need to make sure that we have an accountability board when we have these types of incidents with officer-involved shootings, that the community has input in what's happening. The biggest thing that we can do is give people more of a say in terms of what happens. But I'll be honest with you, the police department has a lot to do in terms of earning the trust back from what we've seen in the news and in the media. But we need to make sure we have a good police chief in there that's going to be able to implement all of the reforms we know are necessary.
So an issue that I care about locally is the really poor air quality that we have here in Fresno. So as mayor, how do you plan to address that?
That was a good question by Rowan, and it's an issue that's on a lot of people's minds, especially in the last couple of years. We've seen an increase in poor air quality here in the Central Valley, and I think the first thing that we need to do is have a unified system to alert people when we have bad air days. We had a 5 on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the worst, just a few days ago, and some people were allowed at schools to continue to go out there. Kids were breathing in this stuff. It's a huge public safety issue. It's bad for our health, but that doesn't address the underlying issues of bad air quality in general. We need to do more as Central Valley, as a community, to limit the amount of burnings that occur in terms of ag. There are other alternatives to burning. For example, chipping. We can put the ag products into a machine that basically chops up all of the wood and all of the debris. That's a viable alternative. I mentioned earlier that I'm very big in terms of moving our city fleet of cars from petroleum-based engines to fully electric engines. That'll do a lot to enhance the air quality. We need to get people into mass transportation, get people on buses and other forms of mass transportation is going to be huge. And then also for me personally, I support the high-speed rail. I think that's going to take a ton of cars off of our freeways that drive up and down the Central Valley. The cars that drive up and down the Central Valley are putting out a ton of pollutants in the atmosphere, and so I support high-speed rail. And basically any type of green energy jobs, we need to continue to promote those as well.
I have one follow-up question. So you mentioned like public transportation, like the bus system. The bus system is often, it's really utilized by students or people who live in kind of lower income communities, but a lot of the areas in North Fresno and people who have a little bit more money, they just rely on their cars. So do you have any plans as mayor to kind of broaden the amount of people or like the types of people who will use the public transportation system?
Yeah, we need to do better in terms of promoting our transportation system. It is generally safe. We need to make sure that people understand that these are clean, new buses that we're using here in Fresno. There's just a culture shift that I think that needs to happen. So many people, as you mentioned, are so reliant on their cars. And so I think the city can do things to incentivize people to take buses into downtown, especially along the Blackstone corridor, where people can go and attend games and festivals and have, dinner or drinks or whatever. But there needs to be a concerted effort amongst community leaders to make this a priority, and that's something that I promise to do when I'm mayor.
All right, so our last question, just to wrap this up, is millennials are the largest age group, but they have the lowest voter turnout. What is your message to young people, millennials and Gen Z, about the importance of voting?
So I'm technically a millennial, so if I'm elected mayor, you're going to have a millennial mayor. That is going to be the first time that that's ever happened in our city's history, to have a mayor that is of my age. But I can only get there with the support of young people, as you'd mentioned. And so from when I was young in my 20s, I worked really hard to organize students and young people to get together on issues that are important to me and I think to our generation. And so the voter, the participation in voting is huge. You don't know how many lawmakers that I've met with that have said, look, we appreciate you coming in here, but young people just don't vote, so I'm not going to do XYZ things that we were asking for. And so it's just so important with what you see right now going on in our country. If you think that we need a change here in Fresno, you have to vote, and every single vote matters. We just had a city council race that was determined by 6 votes. And so it's just so important that everyone recognizes how easy it is nowadays to vote. You can just show up at any one of the voting centers. This is going to be a voting week. We have to stop thinking about elections in terms of a voting day. This is going to be a voting week. You're going to have up to 4, sometimes 10 days to go into these polling centers and cast your vote. And you don't even have to be registered. You can go there same day, get a ballot, cast it, not a provisional ballot, but a real actual ballot. And so for me, the message to young people is stay engaged, stay loud, and continue to talk about the things we care about on social media.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Do you have anything else to add before we conclude today?
This is such an important election in our city. We are at a crossroads, and I just appreciate you so much for bringing me on and asking me all these tough and important questions. But we have a big decision to make. If you believe that everything is fine in Fresno, that everything is on the right track, vote for my opponent. Vote for Jerry Dyer. But if you think that we deserve better than what we have now, if you think that we should do more to support events like Grizzly Fest and making sure that we have a soccer team downtown and places to go at night, places to hang out, then you're going to vote for change, and you're going to vote for me in my campaign, because that is everything that I stand for. I want to make sure that we move Fresno forward and make it into a city that we can all be proud of.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me. This was really cool.
Awesome. We make sure you guys come out and vote on March 3rd. It's very, very important. Again, as he said, you have up to a week to vote. They're going to be mailing out ballots to all the registered voters in Fresno, so make sure that you guys turn those in to the polling centers that you're assigned to.